Hey guys, Feuerrm here, and today I'm going to be testing the W Motors Fenyr Supersport in multiplayer in the Ghost series. Now, I made a video previously about this car at this same rank, but it is a real beast, and it was by far the best car of this series, and I managed to reach top 1 again, somehow. And in this video, I'm going to show you some of the most intense and closest races I had in the season. And these were all actually very close to the end of the season, so they had a lot of weight put behind them. Because at this point, I knew I was going to try for top 1 again, and so it was very stressful, as you might be able to imagine. And one thing that made it even more stressful was the Osaka tracks. While I feel like I know them pretty well, I don't know them as well as some people still, and I just don't feel as comfortable on them as on other tracks. So when these came up near the end of the season, well, I just tried my best on them. In some cases it turned out well, in some cases it didn't, and this race here was one of the closest ones that I had. And a lot of the races I had near the end of the season were against other Fenyrs, so there's some very good competition in this video as well. However, I did notice I had some races against some Egoistas and Feuerrms mostly that were actually quite good competitors in a lot of cases, especially on the tracks where this car could not get up to its top speed fully because the Feuerrm has better handling and the Egoista has better acceleration. And in this race, the car directly behind us is actually not a Fenyr, it's a Feuerrm. The Fenyr is still way back there, so you can see that although the Fenyr definitely is the best car of the series, ones like the Feuerrm and the Egoista, especially those two, can still do extremely well against it. And if you don't have the Fenyr at a super high level, you can still get pretty high in this series. The second race is against an Egoista, so the other of those two cars, and we will see here where its strength lies is in its acceleration, because they are able to get ahead of the Fenyrs at the beginning of the races, and if the Fenyr cannot get up to a higher speed than the Egoista, well, you're really not going to be passing it. So that's why it's really good in the Fenyr if you can get tracks where you can get above at least 240 to 250 miles per hour, at least on some parts of it, because the Egoista tops out at around 238. And since I've gotten to a point on this track where I can go a lot faster than that, that's where I start to pull away from him. And on most tracks, you can in fact do this. And that's why the Fenyr is the best car of the season. And even if the beginning of the races are close, which they often are, towards the end, as we can see here, is where you really will start to pull away. And we do take the victory in this race. The Ghost multiplayer season is something that players have been asking for a long time, and Gameloft has always said that they didn't really think they were going to do it because they were just kind of going to be like events and trying to get a good time and not actually interacting with the players. But I'm glad they finally did it, at least experimenting with it to see how people like it. And personally, I really enjoy it because it makes it 100% skill-based, because you don't have to worry about getting knocked down or getting pushed off the edge or something like that by somebody else. Now, I don't think it's good for all multiplayer seasons to be like this. There needs to be player interaction in most cases, I think, to make the multiplayer seasons more interesting. But this was a good experiment. I'm glad they did it. I had a lot of fun in it, and it actually kind of spoiled me, because when I went to play, I think, the special event, the Godly Beast thingy, after doing some multiplayer in this, I was like, wait, why am I hitting the cars? Because I got so used to, in this, just kind of going through them, which is really cool. And one thing I thought was interesting was that they didn't even make the cars become, like, ghostly when you go through them, like it is in Forza. You literally just go through their full models. And here at the end of the race, somehow I managed to pass them at the very last second and go up 4 rating instead of going down 7 like probably would have happened if I'd come in second. That becomes a real problem when you're trying to get to very high on the leaderboard, because the higher rating you are at, the more you go down when you lose and the less you go up when you win, which means you have to win a lot of the time in order to actually go up. And I did have my setbacks. There was a time earlier in the season when I was just 4 rating away from number 1, and then the very next race I was in first except for the very last 5 seconds of the race when I flipped over and wrecked, left the race because I was going to come in 5 out of 5, and lost about 20 rating. Yeah, that was not fun. And then the number 1 guy, RPM Barbaros, who is another Legions United member, went up another 40 rating, and so I had to go up way higher than I would have otherwise if I had just won that race. It makes for a more interesting video, and I got some very good races out of it, so at this point, I'm not really complaining. I'm just glad I made it there in the end. This race here was yet another close race in an Egoista, and you know, I noticed something really weird when going through the races for this video. A lot of the really close races, not all of them mind you, but a lot of them were against other Egoistas. It seemed like for some reason when I raced Fenyrs, it would either go really well or really terribly. I'm not entirely sure why, but some of these Egoista drivers were really good, and this was the other car that I used quite a lot when getting up here. Now, once I got to the top 10, I only used the Fenyr, and by the way I kept using it was I would do like 5 to 7 ads, and then I would refill with 70 tokens or so what was left. Now, if you would like to see how a max Egoista performs, I do have a video up about that on my channel. And as we have seen in these races, it is pretty good because of its good acceleration, like I said earlier, and its ability to just stay at its top speed a lot better than most of the other cars in the season. Now, the Feuerrm, which was one of the other cars that was heavily used in this season, can also do this pretty well, but for a different reason. Its acceleration is only about 80, which is not bad, but it's kind of average, and the Egoista starts up faster than it and a lot of the other cars in this season. However, it has one of the longest nitro boosts in the game, allowing it to stay at its top speed once it gets there fairly easily. Plus, all of its other stats are really good, especially its handling once you get it to max. Now, at 4 stars, which is what mine is at, it didn't do especially amazing this season. Now, it was still pretty good, just not up to par with, well, the other 6-star Feuerrms, which were mostly what I was facing. I'll get there eventually. At this point, I was up to 1461 rating, which was 4 rating below the top guy, who was at 1465. This next race was against a P1 who disconnected before the race started, and I went up 4 to 1465. Unfortunately, when I went out, I was number 2 position instead of number 1 because my decimal point, which doesn't show, was lower than Barbaros's. It's kind of funny because this exact same thing happened in the previous season with the Corvette, except switched, where I got the higher decimal point. But yeah, in case you guys were wondering about this, it's not random if a bunch of people have the same rating on the leaderboard. There is extra decimal places that the game just does not show. Thankfully, in this race that took place right after that one, I was facing a Feuerrm on a track that the Fenyr is actually quite good at because I can get up to pretty high speeds, and it actually ended up being kind of boring because I got pretty far ahead, and so I came in first place and went up to 1469 rating. Nice. I was a little scared that he had played a race during that one and gone up so I'd still be in second, but thankfully that was not the case, and I made it to the top of the leaderboard for my 4th time. The funny thing is, there was one time, I don't remember what season it was may have been a rush season, where I was playing very early in it in some low D-class cars, and I made it to like number 2 or 3, but then I just got a bunch of bad races and wasn't actually able to make it to number 1 in that one. But it's perfectly okay, and I decided to play one more race after that here with another Fenyr who was slightly higher ranked than me, and the beginning of this race did not go so well as you might be able to see here. I wasn't even able to shockwave up this ramp, and I was thinking, okay, I'm just gonna go down at this point, and then I hit that track. Anyway, so I just decided, okay, I'm gonna try my very best, just see what happens, and that's really all you can do in these races. There's no sense leaving when you're right behind in a 2 out of 2 race like I have seen a few people do. But then I got a very good line through this section, went up very high on this barrel roll here, and caught up very close, and actually around this turn managed to pass him a bit. And before the video ends, I should give my general review about this car. It's sort of in mid to high S-class. It's better than cars like the Lycan and Icona and Terzo, but it is worse, I would say, than the Zenvo, the Tryon, and the other cars above that. Recently, Supersonic did a test comparing the Rimac with the Chiron, and RPM Alex did one comparing the Rimac with the Jesco, and found out that the Rimac is actually the 2nd best car in the game, ahead of the Chiron and behind the Jesco. But not too much ahead of the Chiron. That car can still put up a very good fight, and here we come in first, but not by too much. Thank you all for watching. Please like the video if you have enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more Asphalt, Minecraft, Forza, and Need for Speed Heat content, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!